Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Cinema Savvy. It is myself, joined by Ren for a very special episode of the Mount Rushmore series. And today we are going to be attempting to do the Mount Rushmore of anti-heroes, not to celebrate the release of any new films or anything. We've been talking about characters a lot in the last couple of months, and we just thought we've done heroes for a couple of brands, we've done villains for a couple of brands. Let's go into that middle ground. Everyone loves an anti-hero, and there are so many that we probably would like to talk about and won't be able to talk about. And I needed to enlist some very special help. So Ren, lovely to get you back on, and you have internet again as well, which is equally as amazing.
Yes, I have. It feels like I'm living in 2024 again.
Excellent. And kind of what we were talking about before we went to record, we're big on wrestling. There's not a wrestling Mount Rushmore yet.
Yes.
Who knows?
I expect to be on that one as well, on that episode.
Who knows what the future has in store? But the idea of this series kind of stemmed from wrestling. That a very common question within wrestling circles is, "What's on your Mount Rushmore?" or "Who's the Mount Rushmore of wrestling?" And that's slowly what translated into the series and flows and familiar. The concept of the show is we each have our own Mount Rushmore of anti-heroes. We'll be picking our four. There's no criteria as such, obviously, by the fact that they need to be an anti-hero. But whether it's your favourite four, the four you think are the best, maybe some that mean a little bit more to you, some you really enjoy, you want to talk about. We'll each go through our own four. Then at the end of the video, we're going to come together and try and do a definitive Mount Rushmore. And for those even more unfamiliar with Mount Rushmore, the logic is based upon the four founding fathers of America, sealed in stone. And that's how we do this series. So before we get into it, I do want to hear from people at home. So please do comment with your Mount Rushmores. If we miss any obvious names, if you think these guys are completely off it, what on earth are you on? Let us know who they made yours, because it's always fun to read people's picks, especially when people comment 6 or 7, which really does defeat the purpose of a 4. Because we're the ones that got to nail it down to 4. It's not so easy all the time. So as I said, please do get involved. We've got a lot of videos happening. We've just had a Halloween special on this as well, on horror films. We've had loads of new reviews, the John Williams documentary, the Christopher Reeve documentary. Paddington 3 review will be up at the time of this video going up. Sorry, I'm just playing the schedule in my head in advance now. So it's a busy time. There's a lot of things happening. So we announce all of our videos on our social medias, linktree.com/cinemasavvy. But before we really get into this, Ren, do you want to go first, or shall I go first?
I'm happy to go first.
Okay.
We were discussing before we started recording what the profession of each of our picks was. I'm actually going to start with the guy who's unemployed on my list. I'm going to start with the dude from The Big Lebowski. This is tied for my favorite comedy of all time. The other one only has heroes, so I could really only pick for this one. And I just love Jeff Bridges as this guy. He's completely selfish. He doesn't really care about anything too much except for his friend when he passes away. Spoilers for The Big Lebowski. And I just love the nonchalance of his anti-heroism, where he has multiple moments throughout the film where he can choose to do what is clearly the right thing, but he doesn't care. He just wants to be at home and have a rug that really brings the place together and not have his face stuck down the toilet by these strange men who invaded his house. And he goes on this incredible odyssey that just continues to go off on these side quests, and it just completely fits because of how well defined the character is in I know this is the right thing to do. I'm going to do the other thing because it's less work and it leaves me to be on my own.
Excellent. I've only ever seen The Big Lebowski once, and it was a long time ago. It's been sat on that list because the one scene I will always remember is Jesus and the bowling sequences.
Yeah.
And for me, who maybe came into later, I knew John Turturro from Transformers first. So I was like, oh my God. Okay. I was like, it's Simmons from Transformers. And people are probably raging at that. And I know he reprised it for a role, but...
honestly, I think I'm with you. I couldn't pinpoint at the moment. I couldn't pinpoint exactly where I know John Turturro from, but I wouldn't be surprised if I actually saw him in Transformers first.
Yeah, and I think he's great in his films. I'm just going to say it. I know some people don't like it, and of them, I think he's great. But I'm glad you picked the Duke, because when he mentioned sort of unemployed, I was sat there like, who on earth could it be? Because now it makes, as soon as you said the dude, I was like, yeah, like that was so obvious, like the unemployed character that everyone knows. But that's a pretty great start. I don't have an unemployed person for my first pick. I'm going straight in with the big guns, and I'll be really honest. There's a somewhat thematic continuity with mine. As I look at my list that I've written down. But first up, I'm just going to get the heavyweight on the board, John Wick.
I might as well make that my second pick because I have it as
Yeah,
well.
that's absolutely fine because listen, who would have known back in was it 2015 or 14?
14.
This would go on to be one of the greatest action series of all time, and it's question marks whether it's actually finished it, whether we are going to get the fifth one. But for Keanu Reeves to reinvent his career with this low budget action film, I don't want to call it almost like the greatest origin story ever made, but the build up to John Wick,
Greatest character introduction ever for me, for
that's
my
the
money.
that's probably the better term. The monologue from the villain tells you everything you've ever needed to know about a character, in sync with a great banger of a theme. And Keanu is just walking down the stairs with a sledgehammer. Absolutely perfect. It's the Vince McMahon meme. It's perfect. And yeah, I can't talk too much more. I mean, I can talk a lot more about John Wick because I really I don't want not to. But as far as anti-heroes go, some people might think, oh, he's the hero. It's like, he's an assassin. He's done terrible things. Even in the second film, which is my favorite of the four so far, the ending, killing him in cold blood in the hotel, making him have to go on the run and everything, I think it's honestly one of the greatest characters within a series ever. And the thing is, with four films in, no one's sick of it, ever.
Yeah.
No one's saying, don't give me more John Wick. They're not saying make loads more, but it's if the idea's there, if Keanu's up for it, if there's a story to be done, do that story. And I think he'll crop up. I know he's on your list. I think most people, if we'd have had them on for this video, I'd be surprised if he wasn't on everyone's list.
Yeah, if we were ranking these in any way, John Wick would be my number one because this is my favorite action franchise of all time. To the point I've made a short film myself of John Wick, a fan film, and like you were saying, he's definitely an anti-hero. He's not doing this because it's going to be good for the world and it's going to save people or anything. He's doing this because he wants to get the high table off his back. That's it. It's a completely, and that doesn't make him a bad person, but I think is exactly what makes him interesting is, and anti-heroes in general, is that they inhabit that moral gray area that is always going to be more relatable to us as the audience because we're not all good, we're not all bad. And how it builds from movie to movie, how we were saying that the first, it's about a guy who has a puppy, the puppy dies, of course he's going to get revenge, but then by the end of the second one, he's on the run. By the end of the third one, he's dead. And an entire criminal organization is coming after him. And by the end of the fourth one, he is actually dead. We don't know, like you were saying.
I don't think he ever was. I think for me, there's that shot of the gravestones. The dog turns its head.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm not saying it because there's talk of a fifth one, but when we all saw that at the Leicester Square at the press screening, I was like, he's alive. We're going to get Christian Bale.
Same
Dark Knight
here,
Rises
because
moment.
even as we were watching it at the time, I remember that they were going to do 4 and 5 back to back. So when it ended that way, yeah, the dog turns his head, but we don't actually see him. So I was like, why are we not seeing him? We know the fifth one is coming out. And only after the movie, we had all those conversations of, oh no, they made 4 and 5 into one movie. So this is supposed. So I was just very confused. I was fully expecting 5 as I was watching 4.
And I kind of think with John Wick, if they wanted to not do a fifth, then they've got a great ending with 4 anyway. You know,
yeah, exactly.
Leave it up to you. And I think they nailed it. And again, if you look at his character and where he went along those years, where he went, I mean, he went literally everywhere. But the amount of people that have died for him is very not selfish as such. But there's that look at the professional what they do, and in an ideal world, they wouldn't be bending the rules for him. And I think he is an anti-hero as such. And a great little John Wick discussion. It's really hard not to end up talking about John Wick. If I'm honest,
I know.
I've not seen one in a while.
I mean, for any gamers out there, if you're a gamer yourself as well, he has the exact same story as Kratos. He goes up to Mount Olympus to kill all the gods.
I'm playing God of War for the first time.
You're playing God of War for the first time.
But
are you playing the new ones?
Yes, the Norse
Okay, I'm talking
ones.
about the original
Okay,
trilogy,
that's
Greek
fine. That's
mythology.
fine. Sorry, I was just like,
No, it's
I
okay.
was
It's
like, I
okay.
know it's been 6 years, but I've just climbed
No,
the
it's
top of.
fine.
So, boring behind the scenes story. When it came out in 2018, the world said how great it was. I played a little bit of the originals. I didn't know much about the story, but I played a little bit. I knew who the guy was, and I climbed to the top of the mountain, the new one, and I was like, "Go climb another mountain." I was like, "Fuck off!" I turned it off. And I know that like video game people are fuming that opinion, and that's a very childish opinion. But it hadn't gravitated to me like it had to a lot of people. And when they were like, "Go climb the second mountain," I traded it in. I'm not joking. I traded in. So I have started playing it again in the last week only because
Okay.
I've bought tickets to the PlayStation concert, and I was like, I guess I'm gonna have to play both God of Wars to be able to appreciate the music. So I've got to where I've started again. I've got to the top of that mountain again. The Scottish bloke said climb a
Everything
bigger
I
one.
mentioned, the comparison only applies to the original trilogy. So
That's
everything that's
fine.
before the games you're
But if it
playing.
got spoiled, I'm not going to complain because it's been out
Yeah.
6 years and the other one's been out, what, 3 years now? Or 2 years?
Uh, 2 years, I think, because I think it was 2022. Yeah.
I mean, Kratos would probably be on, if we were doing a video game list, it'd probably be on the anti hero list there. That's a great
Yeah,
little.
100%. That's my favorite video game franchise, so he'd definitely be on mine.
Excellent. I'll have Joel on mine. Oh my god, we're talking video games. Right, I'm gonna go on to my second pick. This is
All right.
I don't. This is a controversial one. This is probably one of my favorite performances by an actor in a comic book film. I'm talking about Big Daddy from Kick Ass.
Oh,
Um,
that's a great shout.
the first time it is one of my favorite films of the I said my life. It's probably I'd never rank a top 50, but it would be high up. It's very high up on comic book stuff. I love the first Kick-Ass film. I didn't mind the first comics. I didn't like the second comics, but Big Daddy, seeing Nicolas Cage in the zone in an Adam West Batman parody with the Bat costume combined with Hit Girl was for me one of the most insane first time watches to a film ever. A point where I don't think comic book films are being cranked out as they are now,
Mhm.
but they were starting to be bigger as a genre. We were getting more of them, they were building up to stuff. And Kick Ass came out of nowhere. It was funny, it was entertaining, it had great character development, and had emotion. And I always go to his death when he's screaming to Hit Girl. So many wonderful sequences, and I just keep thinking the warehouse scene where he goes in and massacres everyone. Of course, they're drug dealers, they're terrible people, but he is a vigilante by force, one that's taking no prisoners. And when I first started working on this list, it just sort of jumped out to me straight away that I can't not talk about Big Daddy, and I haven't seen oh god the Nick Cage film from this year, the horror one.
Oh, long
Um,
legs.
I've not seen Long Legs yet. I've heard a lot of different things about it. It's one I'll probably stick on if I get a chance, so I need to kill a bit of time this year. But this is one of my favourite Nick Cage performances. And I don't want to be arrogant and say it rebirthed his career or anything like that. No, I think he's had a batshit insane career, but this I think stands out with a lot of his best.
I agree. You actually just reminded me that I haven't seen Kick Ass in a long time, but I do
Mm.
love this performance. I love the darkness, and I love that the movie also portrays it as this is not a good thing what he's doing and forcing his daughter into this life of vigilanteism, and that's kind of exactly what makes him an anti-hero, because otherwise he's actually doing very heroic things even if illegal. But yeah, it's a great shout, one that I didn't even consider, but it was such a departure from Nicolas Cage, because
Yeah.
he wasn't down and out per se on his career, but he was doing more questionable films, generally speaking. And then this comes out and he gives this kind of performance. He has this kind of rich character to work with. It's just fantastic, and a reminder at the time of the kind of talent that he was and that he could bring to the screen. Uh, shall I go into my third?
Yeah, absolutely. This has been fun so far. It's quite an
Yeah.
aggressive list so far.
All right. For my third, I'm going to go for a character in a franchise, but this is definitely not anything you're thinking of, because this character has no name. In fact, he is a man with no name, Clint Eastwood in a Fistful of Dollars, Once Upon a Time in the West, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, you name it. he's just such an excellent character. He is one of those first sort of mainstream anti-heroes that we ever saw, because there wasn't a standard or a model of it to be adapted onto screen. He was the first time where this incredible film superstar, already at the time, Clint Eastwood, and he played Dirty Harry, which you can also argue is an anti-hero, but despite this character having no name, he is far and wide the most famous of the anti-heroes Clint Eastwood has played.
It's probably one of the most iconic images in cinema.
Yeah.
He's the face of a genre. I'm glad you mentioned Dirty Harry, because you can look to say, oh yeah, he did Dirty Harry after, but most people don't talk about Dirty Harry anymore, but they still talk about the spaghetti
I mean,
westerns.
I've never seen a single one. I just know of it.
I saw, I think, the first one a long time ago. I can only remember a little bit. Going back to Transformers, I can also remember them parodying Transformers, which turns out they did a lot of parodying of
Yep.
certainly Star Trek in the third one.
Yes, sure.
But this is a terrible thing. I've never seen any of the original. I've not seen pretty much any spaghetti westerns. I
Oh
never
wow.
got shown them as a kid. My dad's seen them. Like he's got them on DVD. He just never sat down and watched them together. And they've been on the list. Yeah, I know that Ennio Morricone scores some of the greatest pieces of music ever made in those films in the 60s.
100%.
And I'm glad you brought him up, because I think we'll be talking about him later on, because that would have been on my list to talk about later without even seeing them, which goes down to that level of iconography. Yeah, I've not seen it. I've seen clips, I've seen sequences, I've heard the music, and it's Clint Eastwood. It's what birthed Clint Eastwood. I know that Juror number 2's out at some point very soon. But yeah, if I get into my third one, this is a really tricky one. So my third one, I'm saving my four for last, because it's one of my favorites
Okay.
of this. But this has been like I've only ever had two images on my cover photo on Twitter. One of which is from The Godfather 2, which is him kissing his brother. And the second is my current one, if anyone's that sad enough to want to quickly run over. I'm not plugging my own account to go find it, but I am talking about one of Robert De Niro's greatest performances as Neil McCauley in Heat.
Ah,
This film,
what a picture.
I understand the Michael Mann love and hype. And we spoke before we went live. I was like, I used to go to a neighbour's house every Thursday. Him and his mates would have beers. This is when I was like 14, 13 age as well. So technically it's all a bit weird by that. Not anything weird happened, but I was getting shown films like Heat at the age of 14, 15. Almost, you had myself at weekends and like after school watching films, catching up on things like picture like 2008, 2012. I'm obsessed with Marvel, obsessed with Star Wars, blah blah blah. And in the background, I'm getting shown these bangers. And every week it was, have you seen Top Gun? No, we're going to go watch Top Gun this week. Have you seen Heat? No, strap yourself in. And every Thursday his wife was out, which meant the speakers could be loud. And fucking hell, the first time watching Heat, the bank sequence. And I know I'm not talking about Robert De Niro yet, but Robert De Niro, I think, is quite comfortably in the top 5-10 actors of all time. You could put it higher if you want. And his work is so varied. The directors he's worked with, the ones that kept coming back to him, but there is something about Neil McCauley where, as an anti-hero, you love him, you gravitate towards him. The beauty of the film is you align with the villain by default. He is the criminal that you want to win, and the cop, the good guy, is who you want to see falter at the same time. And you could even argue the case of Al Pacino being an anti-hero in this film too, because he's the cop playing it bad. One of the best films ever made, but Neil McCauley makes this list for me on the basis of, I don't want to get the quote wrong, but dropping the heat after 30. I'm not going to say it because I want to say it wrong, but where the film goes, where the film ends, and the choices his character makes, how that character evolves, then goes back to his core origins, his core belief. If he hadn't have chose to walk out, if he had chose to got in that car and met the driver, he'd be safe, he'd have got away with it, he'd be fine. But he never could. And it's his own flaws which have cost him and cost his crew. And I think he has to sit on here. And it was really tricky because I almost put Al Pacino on here. I was like, I can't put them both on. I have to really nail it down. And because Al Pacino ends up winning, technically in this film, the great final moment of the two in passing with one another, the sequence at the cafe, the first time these two ever shared a scene with each other, which I
One of my
don't know if
favorite scenes of all time is that scene in the coffee place. You know,
here's a question.
here we are sitting, you and I, like a couple of regular fellas.
Will we ever have two actors have that moment again in that? And I'm not
Who would it
disrespecting like the generation
be?
that's come. This is it. This is it. And I'm like, who? I'm trying to picture that in 1995. You're watching like two of the greatest actors of the last 20 years for the very, very first time share a scene in what would go on to be one of the best thrillers of their entire careers, which is so
Yeah.
high as a bar. And I
Because it's
don't
not
want.
just. I'm trying to think of like who would be like the two if we had a 2024 version of seeing that. Because
I can
De Niro
think
and
of
Pacino,
younger
they're
ones.
so specifically connected throughout their careers. Even though this was the first time they share the scene, they shared. Well, not the first time they share the movie, I guess. Um, but yeah, I don't have. I don't think there is a comparison right now, at
No,
least.
if you gave it 10 years,
Mhm.
and I don't want to stay in because it's a struggle. I think of something like Chalamet and Rob Pattinson. But even in 10 years' time, I don't think those two would ever be capable of being De Niro Pacino.
Yeah, I mean, I would even suggest you a Chalamet and a Holland.
I thought that, and I was
Yeah,
sat there like the Zendaya in the middle type thing. Tom
yeah,
Holland about to do a Christopher Nolan film, which I think is the best possible move for
yeah.
Tom
I'm
Holland's
so happy
non-Spider-Man
for him.
career.
Not to get sidetracked, but I'm so happy for him.
Yeah, it's just that sequence in the cafe,
Yeah,
and we're gonna get Heat too.
yeah.
I'm not
Hopefully
sure
that
about that.
works.
Adam Driver playing Neil. I've not seen Megalopolis yet, but are you going to cut the hair, Adam? You are my favorite actor, but again, I don't know if he's capable of it. Sorry to detract and turn it into a
No,
conversation
not at
about
all.
Heat, but
You shouldn't watch Megalopolis, by the way.
it is the film of anti-heroes, though, isn't it? Like anyone in that, there's no morally. Even Natalie Portman in that film is
Yeah,
questionable.
true. All right. For my last pick, this is the one I wasn't sure if it works because the character I'm about to name is someone who starts off as an anti-hero, but by the end of his trilogy, of the trilogy of films he's in, he's 1,000% a hero by the end of the third
Okay.
film. I would even argue he's a hero throughout the entire third film. And then there's another trilogy, a sequel trilogy that follows this one, where he's definitely a hero for the one movie he's in before he's killed by his son in the bridge. And my last character is Han Solo himself, which is funny because we didn't consider Indiana Jones, but it makes so much sense that he is an anti-hero. I still went with Han Solo just because I got to shout out Star Wars whenever I get the chance.
I love this pick. I'm glad you brought. We just spoke about Adam Driver. What beautiful timing. Now talk about
Yeah,
his dad. The Han Solo pick. Yeah, it's so tricky for I think not our generation, but because we grew up with the three films together, we
Mhm.
didn't get the weight in between. We got a weight in between of sorts, but not
Yeah,
the weight between 6 and 7 or the weight between 4 to 5, 5 to 6. And I think it's easier for us to forget that he is. You don't know if he's going to come back and help at the Millennium Falcon. He's got his money and he is out of there,
he is a
and
scoundrel. He is a scumbag. He wants the money, and that's it.
it works. And he's one of the best ever to do it. He's the
100.
reason he's at the forefront. People speak
It's
about him.
the gruff charm of Harrison Ford. If you're not watching Shrinking, he still has it, even though he's an old man and he's just playing a therapist.
And we're going to get him as Thunderbolt Ross in what's
Yeah,
going to be the
exactly.
greatest press tour in history when he's asked about
100%.
Marvel.
A
But no,
hundred.
I'm glad you picked him. And yeah, you're right. Going off those original ones, yeah, he's a hero by 7. But even at that point, he's abandoned his boy
Yeah,
without
he's
trying to
abandoned
do
his
depression.
wife.
He's left them. He couldn't cope with it. He's ran off. He's gone back to doing what he did
Yeah, he
before. He's
wanted
had
to be
a.
an anti-hero too badly.
That's a great pick. I can't really add to the Han Solo equation, can we? There's nothing you can add to the conversation about Han Solo.
Yeah,
He
I mean,
is.
what are you going to say about Han Solo that someone else hasn't already said?
I do like the cameo in episode 9. I will give it this as much as I dislike 9, and I'm sorry to be that guy. I love the sequence of Kylo Ren and
It
him
is
in
one
that.
of the few things that works in episode 9 is his appearance.
And the fact they got him back, yes, I know money speaks, but I was still surprised that he would do that with money.
Yeah,
And I think in terms of, I think he knew, like, character wise. I don't think even if he gave him the wad of cash, he'd have done it if it didn't make sense. I think it had to have a purpose for that moment, and
yeah,
it did. And I'm glad that sequence worked because him and Adam Driver, some of the best scenes of that trilogy is those two. Um, my final pick on my own list. This is one of my favorite films of all time. I feel like I said that a lot today. This is a film where I don't want to call it underrated. I don't think enough people talk about it. I understand why, because the director's not exactly the director's a piece of shit now, if I'm honest. But this is one of my favorite villain performances. It's one of the first performances by my favorite actress, and it has one of the most underrated lead actor performances in a film such as this. I'm talking Leon from Leon the Professional.
Oh, I
Uh,
considered Leon. I did consider.
I I mentioned those Thursday night films I used to watch,
Mhm.
and of all the ones I got to see, watching Leon for the first, I actually watched it again recently. I'm on a bit of a Gary Oldman hype at the moment, so I've been going through those Gary Oldman films.
Rightfully so.
But Leon is this. I know Luc Besson's a piece of shit, so I'm just going to get out of the way quickly. And I love Natalie Portman, and I know this is a film that sort of ironically Heat as well. She's in that too, but I know there's a lot of stuff happened behind the scenes with this film. Fans afterwards creeps, paedophiles, Nazis, all of it. It's gross. Leon in this is an assassin. The opening scene, you mentioned John Wick's one of the best intros of all time. The opening sequence of Leon just killing everyone, doing the job, leaving him the phone, disappearing back into the shadow. The glasses that Jean Reno wears in the film, and this sounds terrible, but it's always reminded me of Ratatouille. Like I don't know if it's because he does like I don't know if it's because he does like a mouse impression later on, or just the pig impression, but he's always felt like a mouse. Like whenever
The
I watch it,
French.
and
It's the
yeah,
Frenchness of it.
he's got this innocence that this he knew he had to pick. I'm an assassin. I really let this kid into my life. I could die now. Do I kill her? He weighs it up on the first night. Shall I put the gun to her head? End this now before it ends up going to me. And he doesn't exactly say, "Yeah, I'm going to get you to school. You get to be a good girl." It's like, I'm going to take good dog. I'm going to train you to be an assassin too. Uh, and I think he's incredible in this. I think the whole film works. You need to have the right villain. You need to have the right young actress next to you, and Natalie Portman. I think her career blossoming into what it's been is a massive reason why it's easy to go back to Leon. It's like, whoa,
Yeah.
look how good she was at a young age, let alone how she is now, and how she'd go on to be in other things. But Leon himself ultimately having the hero's ending, which he would have never wanted. His house plant, his best friend, getting planted in the garden, which he also didn't want. He sort of is by default like the nicest hitman ever.
Yeah.
I know that's been an eccentric theme of my picks that they've all been pretty much hitmen or killers or whatnot, but John Wick very much has a moral high ground, whereas Leon, I think, because it's a one film and done, it's about a relationship between a hitman and a young girl. And again, the Luc Besson stuff sort of does make it creepier, but I think Leon has everything you'd want from an anti-hero.
100%.
Um,
Completely agree.
and it's no one really talks about it. I don't know. I get why it's a Luc Besson, but I just think even outside of that, everyone talks about Gary Oldman, and he is so good in it.
Yeah.
But like,
Everyone.
if I could cosplay, not that I ever do it, if I could look like a character naturally to cosplay, it would be Norman Stansfield. I'd love to be able to do the weird, like, click mouth thing with the
Mhm.
tablets and all that. Like, in terms of build-ups to villain, just yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
But that rounds out my four. So for video's sake, we'll get an overlay in. But my four, if you want to read yours after,
Yep.
I've got John Wick from the John Wick series, Big Daddy from Kick-Ass, Neil McCauley from Heat, and Leon from Leon the Professional.
I have the dude from The Big Lebowski, and I have John Wick from John Wick, the man with no name from The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, and I have Han Solo from Star Wars. I did have just in case the Han Solo wouldn't work, I did have like a fifth choice to add in as a possible fourth, just in case I had
Okay.
to replace anyone. And it's funny that your fourth, well, your last one was Leon the
Really?
Professional. Is this no? It's not Leon. It wasn't Leon the
Okay.
Professional, but there's connections there that we can segue very easily into to this one. I just want to shout it out as an honorable mention, I guess, because this is also a film about not a hitman per se. This person does become a killer, but this is a very disturbed person who creates the special bond with a very young woman who also impressed everyone in the 70s, and everyone was like, "Oh, who is this person that is so good at this young age and has continued to be great in films?" I want to shout out another Robert De Niro performance, Travis Bickle in Taxi Driver. Martin Scorsese's best film, if you ask me. Still.
Great pick. Yeah, that's a very. I can't believe it. Yeah, of course it's. Yeah, I'm with you. I've only seen it once, but sorry, in my head I keep having the Joker coming up. I'm like, fuck off, singing Joaquin Phoenix.
Definitely not an anti-hero.
No, and listen, I don't mind people that love the Joker. Fine, I'm not going to mock you for it, but yeah, man, go watch King of Comedy,
Yeah.
Antihero. Go watch Taxi Driver, Antihero. There's a lot of
Watch
Robert De
Beyond the
Niro.
Professional, anti-hero.
Yeah, just thank God no one picked Joker, thankfully. But that kind of rounds out the first part. The second part's going to be tricky for this because we're going to try and come together to do a combined one. And when we say combined one, it's like they might not be on our list. We might be thinking, what should the Mount Rushmore of antiheroes be? And it's more of a chat, and we'll pick four. We'll come together, but I want to just jump in with a couple we've brought up.
Mm-hmm.
I immediately the iconography, the image of an antihero. I've got the man of no name like straight away.
Yeah,
for historically within cinema, let alone for what those films are and have gone on to be.
Yeah, because he became the reference. It's like when you talk adventure films, Indiana Jones is the reference. When you talk space fantasy, Star Wars is the reference. Regular fantasy, I guess, Lord of the Rings is the reference. The Man with No Name is the reference when you talk about anti-heroes in film.
Yeah, and also, I love a protagonist without a name. That not to get onto a Nolan talk, but the slander on Tenet because he's called the protagonist. It annoys me so much that they use him not having a name as character criticism. I'm like, that's invalid because if he was called Tom, you'd just say Tom isn't developed well.
Yeah, and Tom is a very boring name.
Yeah, the protagonist is cool.
As someone who does love Tenet, that movie has legit issues to call out. The protagonist not having a name is not one of them, I don't feel.
Exactly. But sorry, I just wanted to talk about that. Okay, there's one on the board, nice and easy. Mm-hmm. I mean, John Wick makes the list, surely. I mean,
I think just the fact that we both had him on our lists without like talking about it or anything speaks volumes to. Yeah, he definitely belongs. I even though he wasn't on my list, he wasn't on your list. But if we're arguing, like generally speaking, what is the Mount Rushmore? I would have to put Deadpool on it.
I agree. I'm not the biggest fan of Deadpool. I think I've said this a million times on the channel. I used to read the comics a lot. The first Deadpool film came out. I loved it on the first viewing. I hated it on the second viewing. I hated it on the third viewing. The second one I didn't really like from day one. I rewatched them both surrounding Deadpool and Wolverine, and I liked the first one more, but still didn't love it. Second one, yeah. But you have to look at for cinema. He's the definitive modern day anti-hero. Mm-hmm. He's changed the landscape of cinema. If you really want to talk about the R-rated, not necessarily boom, but I still maintain if the studios didn't do Deadpool, which they were forced into because of Ryan Reynolds' leaked test footage, which I agree with, we're not going to get some of these bigger studios taking these punts on. Hey, can we do it? If we just had a really popular first one. Let's make it to someone who I know we spoke to Paul it live and actually got timed in with the release last week. If Sony hadn't destroyed Venom, a Tom Hardy Venom trilogy would have been bigger than Deadpool. Yeah, and to me, it's one of the greatest travesties of modern cinema. I know it's comic book stuff. I know people don't like that, but you look at Tom Hardy, where in this Marvel contract, he was not able to do as many roles as normal because he's sat around waiting for the Marvel contract. You've got to keep these days free. But I'm with you. Deadpool, 100% on that list. And it's a crying shame that we kind of Venom because of one terrible studio. Yeah. In Sony's ideal world, it'd be a Mount Rushmore of Spider-Man villains from Spunk.
You know what's really funny? When you look back at when Spider-Man 3 came out and how disappointed we all were in Venom, it is still the best movie to ever have Venom in it.
Yeah, I massively agree with you. And also the Venom. Most people's issue with Venom in 2007
Yeah,
is the design and Topher Grace,
yeah.
which it's all Avi Arrad's fault, and I'm not going to pin it on Topher Grace, but
No,
the transformation scene is still fucking incredible,
it is.
so
It is.
good. And
And I
and I'll
don't even
say
mind the
this,
look. Personally speaking, I don't mind
no,
the look. I just hate that he always takes it off. It's like I don't
yeah,
want
it
to see you
looks.
be Venom.
It's like, oh, here, have your yellow teeth and your fangs. I'm like, oh, come on, man.
Yeah.
Like, but yeah, it's a crying shame, and I'm glad you brought up that. Yeah, 2 and 3, and also let's be honest, Tom. As much as I'm not the biggest fan of Tom Holland, how would you get a Venom trilogy and not have Tom Hardy face Tom Holland, both two British heavyweight actors who probably both wanted to meet each other respectively on
Yeah.
screen? Whether it happens in the future, I don't know. I don't.
Oh no,
I
anything
without
is possible with Secret Wars.
That's what I keep thinking, and I think if someone said to Tom Hardy, "Listen, it's a 5 minute sequence. You're
Mhm.
going to get to be with them all," he might do it, and that's what I've got to hope for,
We're
that we
gonna
get
pay you
something.
$60 million. Okay.
But okay, we've got 3. We've got a Man of a Name. We've got John Wick. We've got Deadpool. So now this is where it gets really tricky because it's
Yeah.
always putting the last one on. We've got a pretty good basis so far.
Mhm.
Is there anyone really obvious we've not spoken about? Because I'm glad you brought up Deadpool.
I think so. I think there's arguments for a Jack Sparrow.
Okay.
I think there's arguments for Indiana Jones, since we didn't include him. He deserves a shout out. I think there's a really good shout. I did not even consider this person. There's a really good shout for Charles Foster Kane from Citizen Kane. But I can also see an argument where you just say he's a villain, and I get it. And yeah, those are, and Michael Corleone as well. I think he deserves a shout out for sure.
Okay. That's a fucking Mount Rushmore of its own, isn't it? The ones you just mentioned.
Kind of.
Uh, my brain is going to a select few from that.
Hmm.
I love you brought up Jack Sparrow
Yeah,
because he is one
yeah.
bumbling idiot, but he's got a
Again,
good
he's
heart
kind of like,
ultimately. But
not in the same way, but he's kind of like Han Solo, where movie to movie, he's
developments.
definitely a hero at some point.
Travis Bickle's the one that jumps out, who you spoke about earlier.
Yeah, sorry, that was my mic.
Right?
Apologies for you editing the sound later.
That's
Um,
fine. I'll leave it in. It's fine.
but yeah, he's the one that sticks out, like, in a good way, as in, like, he's the right choice. I feel personally, but it's either him or an Indy, because Indy is such a quintessential anti-hero in cinema. Because yeah, Travis Bickle, like I said, for me, still the best Scorsese movie. It's a fascinating character. It's a cautionary tale, a film about PTSD, anti-war, uh, that criticizes how we treat veterans and all that. But Indy, that's still, like we spoke earlier, that's still adventure movies. Indiana Jones. That's the reference, and the hero there, he's the reference as well, because he's in the title. It's like the Harry Potter movies. Who is definitely not an anti-hero, is most definitely a proper hero. But yeah, it's in my own head, it's between Travis Bickle and Indiana Jones right now.
I I'm kind of with you. I can't look past Travis Bickle.
Yep.
I think when you're looking at the anti-hero, it's so much. I know we've got a few franchises in which I've got no problem with franchises either,
Mhm.
and you look at Taxi Driver, that it is the foundation for. I don't know what you'd call the lead character because we know he has PTSD, but someone I know was very critical of Joker 2. They're not in the film circles we're in. This is actually something outside of like that entirely, so I'm not like picking on people now, but they're basically raging. It's like they just couldn't let there be like a white lonely person. There are people like us out there, which I know out of context might sound a bit like an incel, but
Yeah.
this person isn't one of those. I can happily rule that out, and it was really interesting getting like these different opinions, and I just kept going back to the Travis Bickle type things that it's that, right. He's not there morally. You can understand him, you can follow him as an audience member, and as time's gone
You
by,
understand his plight. I like what you mentioned Joker, like where people were applauding about that original, that for me completely misses that point, was to ground the motivation of the character to do the horrible things that he does. In Travis Bickle's case, it still works because you understand what caused that mental
Yeah.
disturbance, that mental imbalance that he suffers from. And at the end of the day, he is killing terrible people while fully being aware that I am doing terrible things. I am not a good person anymore. Like, whatever pity, sympathy I could have amassed, the moment he starts doing the things he does, he's clearly understanding that he's crossed that line. Which is funny because this is also the one movie where Martin Scorsese almost killed someone for. So that's a bit of behind the scenes fun.
Nice. But
He almost became
I,
an anti-hero himself.
I'm with Travis. I don't think I can put Indiana Jones past Travis Bickle just on that concept of.
I get it.
I still think Indy's got too not good a heart, but I'm
But
trying to
he
think about
definitely
this.
understands the difference between good and evil,
Yeah,
and he will ultimately choose good. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I get exactly that, and that's why I'm kind of stuck with Travis. And I think if we're sort of agreeing, which is quite nice, because I was sort of terrified about like we're going to list like 15 names no one brought up. Looking at a combined Matt Rushmore, we have the man with no name, we have John Wick, we have Deadpool, and Travis Bickle, which is a pretty
It's a
good
pretty
list as an
fun list.
overall. It's varied. We've
Different
got
eras, different kind of
yeah,
genres, different actors. Yeah.
we've got action, spaghetti westerns, comic book films, independent dramas, if we want to call
Yeah.
them that. We've got films from the 60s, the 70s, the noughties, the 10s. It's one of those where we've covered a lot of ground within this, and I think it's just gone pretty well. And
Yeah, I think so too.
yeah, I'm more cautious how short it's been. I mean, we're not going to just drag out for the sake of it, but I mean, there is two of us as well, which does make some of these shorter. But it's been amazing having you on, Ren. I know we've not been able to get you on recently with your internet issues, but for those that aren't aware, we've got a link to your channel in the description. When I say what you're working on at the moment, I know you've got a backlog. I know you spoke about you've just had a review out for Conclave, I think, as well as Venom:
Yes.
The Last Dance.
Yeah.
What else are you working on for people where they can catch you or what to expect?
I am right now. I'm just working through that backlog of film festivals. So I'm starting with Conclave, just because, spoiler alert, it was my favorite film of the London Film Festival. So I'm gonna ask in that video what other reviews you want to see next. I have a full list, so whatever people vote the most for. We have We Live in Time, Anora, The Wild Robots, so many movies that I saw at the festivals that I still have. So if you go watch those videos, if you go watch those reviews, just type in the comments below which one you want to see next, and I'll work through which ones have the most votes. And thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to finally be on here because I finally have internet. I'm sorry I missed the Marvel Mount Rushmore
I
one,
know you were so
but
close.
we'll do the wrestling one. I'm not letting you escape with the wrestling one. I'll be there.
No, definitely. And like I said, for people at home, God, I don't know how many episodes are into this now, but this is like I think Paul summed it up best. It's a season one, and like Netflix, we're not going to cancel it, but we're sort of treating it like a limited series. So it's going to pop up probably multiple times a year, maybe like 10 episodes in a row. And we try and time it into new releases or things that are happening. So you can imagine if we do the next roundup during Oscar season or toward the end of Oscar season heading to blockbusters, there's going to be a lot of opportunity. WrestleMania sits within that window, of course. And then maybe some other wrestling stuff cropping up in the next sort of few weeks and months we'll talk about nearer the time. So there is opportunity to talk about wrestling. And with the Mount Rushmore series, yeah, it's been great getting you on, because I know when we first spoke about it, you mentioned DC. I was like, oh my god, Red's internet's still down. I was like, got to Marvel, I was like, no, his internet's still down. And then your internet came back last week. You were live on Saturday, and I was like, here we go. Is it too soon to pop the message in? Are you free this week? No, it wasn't too soon. So thank you
Never.
so much for jumping on. And like I said, we'll be able to get you on some more. And for people watching at home, do comment, not your anti-hero Mount Rushmore, but comment what you want us to do with the series. We've got this one rammed until December. We've not like tweeted a schedule as such, but I know for a fact we're doing Ridley Scott films at some point. We're doing soundtracks. we're doing Christmas films to end this little run on, because then we're moving into the Christmas stuff in December. So there's a fair few coming. We're pre-recording this in advance. I believe there's 4 more episodes after today for season 1. I don't even want to call it season 1. That sounds way too formal for a YouTube channel. But this is going to return. So comment what you would like us to do. I'm definitely sure we've mined out DC, but there's still room for more Marvel stuff. I can tell you that. And for everybody watching at home, once again, thank you all for watching, for commenting, for our new viewers and subscribers. Thank you so much for finding us. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and we'll see you on the next one. Take care.